Welcome to This Week with EdSurge for the week of August 12th. I'm Ira Apfel, Editorial Director here at EdSurge. What do the youngest learners in the building actually need from the adults around them? Our first guest says it starts with treating early educators as professionals, making a career choice and not just someone filling a job vacancy. Our second guest says it starts with treating 5-year-olds like they're capable of understanding the tools already in their homes. Let's start with Nicol Russell, who's watched this play out as a teacher, administrator, and policymaker over the last 20 years. In 2010, a young woman walked into a child care center in Arizona. No experience, just nerve and a need for a job. 15 years later, she's still teaching, not because the system was designed to support her, but because someone made a choice to see her as a whole person and not just another hire. That kind of moment doesn't happen by accident. It happened because Nicol Russell made it happen. Nicol is Chief Academic Officer at Teaching Strategies. Lindsay's story is where Nicol starts her latest piece for EdSurge. It builds towards a bigger question. We talk constantly about the whole child. Are we doing anything close to that for the adults raising them? Nicol, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Lindsay's story has a happy ending. She's still teaching 15 years later, and that's great. But you use her to point at something much bigger that's going wrong in the field. What does your story tell us about what's typically missing for early childhood educators?
From the beginning, when folks are being interviewed, considered for roles, there's something that's happening related to hiring a teacher, filling a job vacancy, and failing to forget for that person, this is a choice. It could be a choice about a career, not just the job for now, not just to fill my time in the moment. So I think what's missing in many of these decisions that are being made is thinking beyond that critical moment, right? Like we think about what's happening in the field and there's a teacher shortage. There are folks looking for work. And in the moment, everybody wants to fill the vacancy, get the person hired. But beyond that, it's how are we going to keep this person here? What will make them continue returning to this choice over and over again?
Obviously, Lindsay's story is very striking. It's a very strong example of what you're trying to get at. But I'm wondering if there's some kind of personal identification that you have with it. Was your story similar to Lindsay's, where you just kind of showed up and someone like held out their hand to you and said, "Hey, I can help you walk it through it because it's not easy being a young teacher new to the profession." Was it something like that for you as well?
What happened for me was the opposite, Ira.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't have someone who helped me along. And when I began teaching, I didn't have someone who from day one said, let me help you be successful. Tell me more about what you want to do here. From day one, I was told, here's what's expected when you show up. Here's what we need for children by the end of year. Go. And so that experience has just stayed with me all these years that I've been in this field now. It's been more than 20 years. It stayed with me. I don't want folks experiencing that sense of having to find my way, just a lot of times feeling around in the dark is what it felt like, trying to find sound footing, being stable, and then being able to give children my best.
You write in your article that early childhood educators are engineers, not babysitters. I found that really interesting. Walk me through that. What is a teacher designing when they're standing in front of a room full of 3-year-olds?
When I was a teacher of 3-year-olds, I wasn't at the front of the room teaching children like I did when I taught upper elementary children. At 3 and at 4, I'm down on the floor with children. I'm in centers with children. And when I say teachers of children that young are engineers, what I mean is these children come to you completely open to trying new things, experimenting alongside you. So as the teacher, I'm constantly thinking about, what do I want you testing out today? What provocations do I provide? Because they have the curiosity, they have the self-driven interest to go explore some things, but they're limited by what I have to offer. And I think about engineers in the same way, right? They're constantly testing and seeing what's failing, what's being successful, and why. So as a teacher, when I see children being successful, enjoying something, I wonder why. How do I do more of that? How do I get them to do that in more interest areas and expand their horizons?
I'm wondering, too, if that's part of the disconnect, part of what gets some early childhood educators, new ones, to the field to drop out because they think it's X and it turns out to be Y. Is that something you've also seen in your years as in early childhood education?
I've seen this from two sides. One as actually being the teacher, having folks not understand what I do every day. And so that's sort of dismissed and discounted. So the importance of supporting me as the person, having to come up with ideas that inspire children's continued learning. There's that side of it. But I also have been on the side of the administrator who, when I'm caught up in the busyness of my day to day, I can feel removed from the classroom. I don't know what the teacher needs every day unless I made an intentional decision to go check in. Hey, how's it going in here? What do you need in here? So I've seen it from both sides. And yes, it is a common mismatch that's happening in our field between like what's actually needed for young children and what opportunities are provided to that educator to create the opportunities.
There's a new study out of Rutgers University that found teacher retention jumped 23 percentage points when teachers had a connected system of three things: curriculum, assessment, and coaching. How do those connect? And what's the thesis on their retention impact?
The thesis is those cannot be disparate, disconnected pieces. There has to be coherence. Those things have to go together. I'll first take curriculum and assessment. I think of those as a unit, they go together. Best curriculum is informed by really good data you get out of assessment. And assessment, I know folks hear that word and they have a picture in their mind, probably based in their own experience where they're filling in bubbles, right, on a little sheet and they're like, oh, they're going to assess it. Look at my results. When I'm thinking of assessment, sure, that's some data, but I'm thinking about what's happening formatively. What do I know about this child on the day to day that's informing what I know they need from me tomorrow? When I can make that unit work, that means when I'm planning for tomorrow or next week or 3 weeks from now, it's being informed by what I know about children. So it's relevant, it's meaningful, that unit works. But it's to your point, like maybe teachers don't know that. That's where coaching comes in. Really good coaching serves either as the first time someone has heard, oh, that's a thing that goes together. Let me show you how and give you feedback on how you're doing it. Or they're a skilled person who knows curriculum and assessment go together, but because they get caught up in the busyness of what they're required to do, lose sight of it. And I think that's what's leading to, at least in the study, what led to retention was the coaching that supported the continued use of good practices and good solutions.
In your article, you described walking into an early childhood classroom, and there was a great curriculum that was just sitting on the shelf, never opened because nobody had shown the teacher how to use it. How common is that gap in early childhood settings specifically, where training budgets and coaching support tend to be thinnest?
And I see that more often than not. I'd say probably upwards of 50% of the time. And I see that happening in places where you've got experienced teachers who, like in that instance of the story I shared in the article, that was an experienced teacher. She told me, I've been here 27 years. In that program, she was going back to what was familiar, right? She literally had reproducibles in a Ziploc bag and she's pulling them out. And they were from her early days of teaching. She knows how to use it. Whereas when I was talking to her about this new to her, I should say, curriculum, and it was beautiful and it's there on the shelf. I said, the thing you're trying to do is here as well. She said, I know, but I know how to do this, right? So that was common. And I also see it with new teachers who just don't know. They're overwhelmed in the moment of all the things to be done. So that taking out the curriculum, which seems very simple, is also simple not to do because it's the priority order is on something else. And so I do see that that's a common thing, Ira.
In the piece, you draw a line between exhaustion and burnout. Another really interesting observation you had. What's one thing a program leader could start doing tomorrow to keep good teachers from burning out?
What I would do tomorrow is find the time in the day I can protect for each teacher to have total control over that moment of time, whether that's 15 minutes, 30 minutes of this is what I decide I get to do for these minutes. I say that because when I think about exhaustion, teachers aren't exhausted because of the job that they're having to do necessarily. It's because they have no control over what is the job to be done. Their entire day is full of expectations from someone else. So as a leader, I would look for moments where I can protect time for that teacher to have complete autonomy. And I know there are leaders who are going to listen to this and say, that's impossible. Okay, it might be impossible to do that daily. Can you do it weekly? Can you do it on a regular, consistent schedule so that that teacher knows, oh, by Thursday, I know I'm going to get my 15 minutes of me time. And they might choose to work, but that's totally their choice. That's what I would prioritize as a leader because when you look at that little line that's between exhaustion and burnout, what's often that line is what do I get to decide I'm in charge of for this day, this week, for myself? And it's a way that you can keep teachers.
If you had one policy lever to pull right now for a state expanding pre-K access, for example, what would it be?
I would say invest in a coaching mechanism, whether that's virtual coaching, in person coaching, some way that you can provide ongoing support to teachers will be one of the most effective ways that you can ensure successful implementation of anything you're trying to do, whether it's curriculum, assessment practices. Folks are focused on literacy right now. A lot of the stories we hear about successful literacy improvement is tied to coaching.
COVID really, really was challenging for all teachers, not just early
Mhm.
childhood educators, but K through 12 and higher education. I'm wondering, based on what you see in your world, do you feel like it's getting better, at least for early childhood educators, in terms of burnout versus exhaustion and turnover? Or do you think it's still kind of continuing on from COVID?
Folks thought we would return to normal. Well, there is no return to normal, right? There's like establishing new normalcy. So I think we're wrestling that with that a bit. And what I think is persisting post COVID is you continue to see workforce shortages. It puts stress on the entire system. So even the teachers that you have who are committed, who have returned to the school setting, those teachers are feeling the pressure. They have larger class sizes, they have more expectations on them. So I don't think we've recovered in the sense that we haven't established how do we do this? And this, by this, I mean education. How do we do this well in an era where our time is divided between what must happen for students right now and what must we do to work on the workforce? We can't hit pause in either. How do we do both? And I don't think we've figured out how to do both successfully.
We'll link to Nicole's story in the show notes. Nicole, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Nicole says early educators need someone to protect their time and for organizations to keep investing in their growth. Our next guest says young learners deserve that same intentional care, just applied to how they encounter AI. Dr. Nneka McGee is the founder of Muon Global, a former math teacher and district chief academic officer. She's also the author of the ISTE Jumpstart Guide, AI for Young Learners, Balancing Tech Use with Authentic Off-Screen Experiences. I caught up with her at ISTE Live in Orlando right after she led a session pairing Play-Doh with generative AI for a room full of very engaged educators. Dr. Nneka McGee has spent years researching how AI shows up, or doesn't, in early childhood and elementary classrooms. She led a session here the other day at the conference demonstrating age-appropriate activities for students as young as age 2. So Nneka, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ira, so much for having me. Thank you to ISTE. I'm happy to be here today.
So you've been involved with AI and education going all the way back to the ancient days of 2018. What's the biggest misconception about AI and young learners that's finally starting to go away?
Young learners can't learn about AI unless they have some type of device in front of them. And research is bearing out that kids can learn about concepts related to AI and still have the readiness levels necessary to progress in their knowledge of AI as they age. The research is still new, particularly on generative AI. Mm-hmm. It is not recommended for young learners. In addition, there are laws and regulations such as COPPA that even though it says, yes, you can give permission, it's also like a guardrail and a guidance for educators and for families to say, wait a minute, let's take a pause. And so in terms of my work, I wouldn't recommend it for young learners. But again, that doesn't mean we can't introduce concepts in ways such as hands-on activities that are in conversation that is research-backed and effective.
When you introduce it to them, just the concept, how is it done? I mean, is it literally said, hey, let's talk about AI, do you know? Or is it more like, steering it in from the kind of the side because they might not even understand it when you mention that term.
When people ask, how do you introduce, young kids to AI, I say start with conversation, start with communication. So you can ask them, because they probably heard the term AI, and if they haven't, then that can further the conversation. Many times they'll say, oh, it's a robot, or they've interacted with the voice assistant, and particularly young learners in many families will understand. They know how to put a phone up to someone's face because they know the voice recognition. And so you can say, hey, have you heard of AI? And yes, no. And it's like, well, what do you think happens when a voice assistant is talking to you? What do you think it is? So you can say, well, it's something that, is designed to act like a human. And this is a conversation. Remember, they should not be doing this work alone. This should be worked with partners where they can come up with their own definitions. And I like it when they come up with the definition together based on their understanding that still have those grounded terms, basically that AI is not human and that it is either designed or programmed by someone or something.
Yesterday, you led a really interesting session on this topic about AI and age-appropriate activities for young learners. And at one point, you paired AI with Play-Doh, of all things. We all got really into it. The whole audience of educators here at ISTE Live. But walk us through the activity for viewers and listeners and the pedagogy behind it.
One of the things that we're trying to do with these activities is to encourage different levels of thinking. And one of those is creative thinking. And then to also use lessons for artificial intelligence. So this is an extension of that definition activity. And what we want them to realize is something called anthropomorphism. So assigning human-like qualities to something that's not human. Now, developmentally, yes, they have toys. We all at some point may have had an imaginary friend. We've said names. I like to talk about how I didn't even make it to Project Hail Mary. When I watched the movie, I'm going, amazing. So even adults will attach it. But this starts the conversation. So it's like, what does it mean to create? And so even a kid, and a lot of times you're like, you're asking questions. Yes, kids love to ask questions. Research shows that effective questioning, the discussion can, lead to growth. John Hattie, visible learning. And so with that, get the Play-Doh, ask them to design a robot. And so and then from that, you ask, well, how did it feel to create? What do you think is different in terms of the robot you created and a human? So now you're using those effective questioning techniques. You've tapped into creative thinking, and they're developing an understanding about the differences between AIs and humans.
Yeah, and I also like how it didn't seem particularly expensive. It was just like, here's a ball of Play-Doh. Yeah. Turn it into a robot, which I did, because you were running the session. And sure enough, I had a little story going on there, and I thought this would be great for my nephew because it's so cool. And it's AI was only part of the whole lesson, if you will. It really was about creativity, it seemed like, and also reading too at the end of it. So it's very cool. Your own research found early childhood educators are hesitant to bring AI into their classrooms. So what are some guidelines for early childhood educators and administrators who are thinking about incorporating AI into their classrooms?
It starts with your district and looking to your district for guidance. If your district is in ban mode, you're very limited. Definitely want to look there to guidance first. The next part of it is as if you're a teacher and they are in ban mode, maybe you go to your principal, whatever the line is, to say, here's this one thing. Can we just start with a conversation? When I talk to superintendents where they're like, we don't have policy, we don't know what to do. And I'm like, just put a one-pager on the website until you're ready with some very simple things. Here's the definition. Here's some links if you want to know more. Another thing is to bring families in. Maybe have either, of course, send out a communication, but also invite them. It doesn't have to be a separate like AI literacy night. It could be a part of STEM night. And again, starting with conversation is so important. From my research and even from observation and even being in the space and working with educators, the biggest issue is they're feeling like kids don't need to be in front of screen. They're associating it with screen time and kids being in front of technology too much.
Do you still find yourself looking or working with AI and thinking, my goodness, like it is crazy what it can do.
Oh, yeah. As we get to the multimodal capabilities of AI, it's nice. I mean, I can imagine just, taking a picture of a Play-Doh and getting not only this, you saw the graphics, right. Amazing graphics, an amazing story, and something that's text to speech where they can listen to right away. And I can send a link to a family where they can interact. I mean, that type of capability is amazing, but not only for what it can do in education in that sense, but what it can do in terms of accessibility has been some very powerful advancements. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in that space. And that wouldn't be possible without advancements in artificial intelligence. So yes, my mind is still blown all the time.
Last question. What do you think AI will be like in the classroom 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I think that AI will kind of be like it was before, where it's in the background, but still we're using it in ways where it's application-based, and you're not necessarily saying use this specific tool. You're saying this is the type of learning that we're going to do today, and these are the tools that we're using to ensure that our kids learn. And then we'll be on to the next thing.
Well, Nneka, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nicole found a great curriculum sitting untouched on a shelf. Nneka found a room full of educators turning Play-Doh into a robot. Both are a reminder that the tools aren't the hard part, the follow-through is. That's also a fitting note to close out our ISTE Live coverage. Thanks to everyone who let us grab a few minutes between sessions in Orlando. Before we go, if this episode was useful to you, send it to a colleague who's thinking about early childhood education and AI. It would really help our show grow and reach the ears of the educators that need to hear it most. That's it for this week with EdSurge. Thanks to Nicol Russell and Nneka McGee for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. For the EdSurge team, I'm Ira Apfel. We'll be back on your feed next week.